Okay, hello everyone, and thanks for watching. Today, wait, shit, do you want me to call you Yoga or Lucas?
Whichever, man. It's fine. We're keeping this in, so it's fine. Keep going.
Okay, today
that's
I'm
definitely
with Yoga
included.
Pants.
Not Yoga Pants anymore, though. Yoga Pants, that moniker's been dropped, man. It's been dropped.
Okay,
It's either Yoga or Lucas.
Okay.
That was just a random name I typed in, and it's just kind of stuck, and it's time for it to go. Like, if I'm actually gonna be a part of this community.
I was searching for your channel, and it kept on coming up with
which I did. Hey, it's a kind of a treat, if you're looking for me, and you get to see some Yoga Pants. So it's pretty. Good.
That's why it took so long to find your channel.
Yeah, I know. It wasn't the best. It wasn't the best. Now a lot of yoga stuff still comes up though. So.
Okay, cool. Right, I'll go with yoga then, seeing as that's your channel name.
Cool, sure.
Hello guys and welcome. So today I'm with Yoga MIA. So his name is Lucas and he's learnt Japanese, Chinese and Portuguese all to a pretty high level. He has a background in computer programming, which is why I thought today would be a good topic to go through, is the role of technology in language learning and how that might have changed over the past few years. So how's it going, Lucas?
It's alright. A little tired. There were some fights last night, but pretty good.
Watching the UFC.
Yeah.
Cool. So the reason I was I'll say a bit of background. The reason why this came, why I got this idea is because I was listening to a podcast on the Tim Ferriss show, and there was a writer on the show that was saying basically when he writes books and he's written like Stardust and stuff like that, he actually writes out pen and paper because he says with the laptop when you're typing it's actually too easy, and the fact that he has to think more when he's writing by hand means his first draft's a lot better quality and he chooses his words more carefully and stuff like that. So then that made me wonder, obviously there's lots of stuff now like, Link and Anki and all the other bolts and whistles. What's helpful and what's not? So I wondered if you want to start, or shall I?
Sure. I mean, I can, but really briefly, did you watch my April Fool's video by chance?
Yes, and I think shit. What's the name of the course again called? Genki. Yeah, I'm all for
the Genki. Yeah, the Genki course. So you can see from in that video, I kind of mentioned that Japanese originated in a pre-digital time, so one shouldn't use any kind of digital content when learning it. So I think my slights on not using technology to learn a language made it pretty clear my perspective on it. But I mean, overall, I think any benefits that are likely gained that may, and one doesn't even know, there hasn't really been a study to say there are any benefits that can really be gained by not using technology, but it's pretty obvious that there's the efficiency gained by using technology greatly speeds up many of the tasks that are required from an immersion learner. So I'm just going to start with that point.
In terms of amount of resources as well, right? You just imagine without the internet how you could even...
including resources.
Order DVDs from Japan or Hong Kong or whatever.
Well, I mean, it's kind of even ridiculous to... I mean, it should just start from the understanding that those are the minimum requirement. Obviously, digital content, as far as digital media, you can't really do it without it unless you go to the actual location. So, I mean, I guess we can have a discussion. Would it be better to just go there, go to a place with native speakers and only learn through actual physical interaction? Is that the discussion? Is that how low? Is that how meta we're going with this? Because man, that would be, I don't know.
Maybe we can talk about that in the future, but just
what exactly? Yeah, what are the scopes? What are the boundaries of this conversation? I'm trying to steer within those boundaries.
I don't have any at the moment. I mean, it's just okay. So okay, how about this? I'll start.
because that's one strategy. One strategy could be, hey, you learn it just through the people, and just through physical books, etc. I mean, that could be a actual strategy that one takes,
okay.
right?
So right, I'm gonna say my opinion, and then maybe that'd give a bit more framework for what I was thinking when I was going into this.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, yeah. Let's.
So,
Okay, go on.
No, I'm not going to argue that don't use TV, don't use Netflix,
Yeah.
don't use Anki, don't use whatever. That's all.
So
crazy.
So at the base, I think. I mean, the funny thing is we're talking about we're having this discussion on the internet about language learning, and you're in the UK, right?
Yeah.
So you're in the UK, and we're having a discussion across the ocean from each other. So, as we say, should we use technology? So it's kind of funny that I mean, even to have a discussion at that low level to say, oh, would it be better to go to the place and only speak? Like we both know that's silly. Like we both know it's silly to even suggest that one would take that kind of approach in the modern day. So.
Okay, so
it's so okay. No, hold on. So wait. So, like the general understanding is technology must be used to learn a language effectively. Okay. But now then it says, what degree should we take it? Yeah. Exactly. Okay. Yeah. So what degree should we take it?
Yeah, I mean, using it to get resources, but and this is where I think arguing what degree that's good because that'll be a nice segue into what I want to say. So. The main, there's lots of advantages for technology. I'm not going to go into that too much because if people follow you, then they probably know them already. The main disadvantage, I think, is that it saps your attention and specifically social media, right? So if you're at the stage when, you're watching a TV show and then you've also got Facebook, Twitter, I don't know, Instagram, whatever up on the top, you can never concentrate. So... What I do, I have like my hours time where I focus in the morning. So I get my stuff online, and once I have it, like I download my show or I download a YouTube video or whatever, and then I turn my phone in flight mode and just kind of get away from it because then you can kind of reap the benefits of actually using this stuff without getting the distraction. And
my phone is always on mute, by the way, literally always on mute.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do agree with that. Go on.
My girlfriend just get too angry if I put it on mute.
No, mine's on mute. I don't care. And then I have a funny voice mail message too. It's like, hey, it's on mute right now. So, but yeah. Anyways, continue. So I definitely agree with that. So, you have to kind of log off.
That's the main drawback. And the other context I want to talk in about technology is people a lot of the time think that because it's in an app, it is automatically better. So there's an obvious example to this is, say, Duolingo or something like that, Yeah. You get all these technology and apps coming out and go, okay, well, I can do it in 5 minutes a day. It's on my app, it's on my phone, I can do it on the bus. In itself, it's not a bad thing, but then if it's kind of feeding the mindset that, oh, I can get super fluent in Chinese after doing it for 5 minutes a day on the bus, then you're not really going to get anywhere. Mm-hmm. So I think it's all about the mindset. So I don't know if you've got anything to say off that.
Well, I'm going to say that I think what you said there, about social media and how it distracts you, I think that's kind of separate from using technology to learn a language. That's just using technology in your daily life and how, how you're using just technology normally might interfere with you using technology to learn a language. I feel like that's kind of separate because, we're largely not responsible for how distracted we get, and it's something that we can train to not be as easily distracted by social media or anything else like YouTube videos, etc., that aren't related to our particular goals. But so as far as how social media or other technologies that we often interface with or interact with can affect one's pursuit in language learning, that obviously can be detrimental if one's not trained to kind of just, when they're doing a task, to try to single-mindedly focus on that task. But I think, social media there's a lot of, there are a lot of videos about it and articles that people are writing about how social media is impacting people's lives in general. So I think any kind of goal a person might seek is being impacted by that if they're the kind of person that's often trying to check their Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or something. So I think we can kind of, would you agree that the social media aspect, it's bad, but that's just it's just largely a distraction from life in general. So I think it doesn't really apply singularly.
I'd agree with that, and it's kind of more of the thing. So
it's just like a distraction in general, which is probably not too good to engage in.
Then what do you think about the so that's fine, social media, that's distraction.
That's not real. That's not like a tech. Yeah. Well, I mean, I can see if you're trying to use technology. Like, I can see if one is trying to say, "Oh, well, I'm going to immerse, through Japanese people's Instagram or Chinese people's Instagram or Brazilian people's Instagram, and I'm going to learn it through there." Yeah, you can do that, but the trouble comes.
It's going to be better. Right?
Go on. What'd you say?
If you're looking at just raw language, I mean, you're going to get much more out of a book than an Instagram.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to get much more out of a book, but I mean, you're going to find like cool, like popular ways of speaking that are modern, but you could probably do that after like you get fluent. I feel like you can get fluent first, and then after that you can acquire those once you've like reached the main goal. Because I
learn all the slangs and stuff last.
Yeah, because you can get kind of distracted. I feel if you're just always in that, you're not going to learn the bulk of the language messing around on social media, even in a target language. And then what often happens with many people, and this is something that I avoided like the plague very soon, like right after getting into language learning, is avoiding language learning communities in general, or language learning communities just talk so much about learning the language. Well, I mean, like, it wasn't that I wouldn't use them as a reference or like resource database, but just actually participating in them. And that's kind of contrary, because I have a bit, I have a Patreon and I have a Discord server, but you can't, it's not really about discussion. This is just about, resource sharing, tool sharing.
You saying the risk that you think there's, and I've seen this before, I think I know what you're talking about.
Go on.
People spend so long talking about the process, they don't actually do any actual learning.
Yeah, there's a lot of that goes on. And, although I don't know what percentage of people actually have this problem, but I feel it's a substantial, percentage. They feel like everything should be like a group effort, and I feel language learning beyond most tasks is such a singular pursuit. It's pretty much something you're doing. It's a really personal thing that one does by themselves on one moment. I'm getting a little coffee here from the wife. Wife reveal at 1 million subscribers, guys. Good luck. Okay. Well, anyways, so thank you. But anyways, yeah. So it's really quickly. I want you to give me your opinion. What do you feel about like forums for language learning? Just forums and just places where people discuss it.
Okay, I think if you go into like Reddit or something like that, or a Facebook group,
exactly what I'm talking
generally you get people ask the same questions up again and again and again. But what you can do is, if you have a very specific question in mind, you can go on there and type it in the search bar and try to get an answer that way. But then
that would be the proper way to use it.
I've also seen you have to take probably answers with a pinch of salt.
That's what I was going to say.
Probably a lot of people answer questions who kind of, oh, you should definitely use this book. And it's kind of like, okay, where are you? I'm like, I've been learning Spanish for 4 years now, and I can almost hold a conversation. So it's like, okay, maybe I shouldn't listen to that.
Yeah.
But what I really like it is like for specific recommendations. So, for example, I could go on to Japanese Reddit and go, yo, can anyone recommend me some good Japanese Kindle books that also have a version on Audible, so I can listen to it after I read the chapter in the morning and stuff like that. And when I was learning Cantonese, I went over to Hong Kong Golden, which is like the Hong Kong version of Reddit, and I was just there like, I read a few of these books on this website. They are pretty cool. Can anyone recommend any good books in Cantonese like this? And then they give some recommendations. I think that's probably
that's the way to actually use it,
because people spend a lot of time hoarding resources, and you can kind of just steal some of their collection.
That's definitely a good way to use that. But I feel like when one is going to go ahead and take part in an online community, for learning a specific language or for language learning in general, they should really be careful to understand that they are social beings, and their brain's going to try to find an excuse for them to socialize, and you have to be like aware of that and catch that and try to maintain like the mind, or like the focus towards your task that you're doing. So it's kind of like a different skill, but it's really related. So I feel like a lot of people, this also relates to like just the social media in general. The training of the task of not like giving importance to things outside of your main task or at least for that particular amount of time that you've set towards it. Yeah, so that's like, I mean, mind you, my focus is far from that, but like I would consider a lot better than the average person. But so that's more the issue when it comes to the distractions with technology, for sure. It's more of a skill of staying on task that a lot of people don't have.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, as like you said with the time box, and that's what's helped me. Like, because it's every morning at the same time every day, and I don't even switch my phone on in the morning until after I've finished it. It's kind of like super easy. What do you think about the other stuff then? So just apps in general. So you're a fan of Anki. I know.
Generally, yeah. It's amazing. We're not a fan of Anki. I'm a fan of spaced repetition studying.
Okay.
As far as a fan of Anki, actually, I'm a pretty big critic of Anki as far as like a piece of software goes. Especially now that I've been developing stuff.
A little bit later.
Yeah,
a bit further down the line. So, what do you think of? I mentioned before, there's lots of apps coming in the market now that say, look, everyone use this app for free for 5 minutes a day and you'll be fluent. Like the Duolingo, Memorize. Shoot, I can't think of any more.
I mean those kind of apps.
Yeah, Hello Chinese or something like that.
Yeah, but I feel like the real issue with those apps aren't the apps. It's just the like, I don't know. It's the issue isn't the technology. Again, I would say the issue is with the bullshit that they're spewing, so to speak. Right? They're not being realistic. They're just straight up lying. They're lying about what language learning is. I mean, it basically is just that. Like, it's lying, which is fine because it's they're targeting casuals, which is fine as well. So I don't necessarily see it as how should I say it? I mean, it's fine that they exist. But
like understand the use of them. Like that.
It's just not.
The door, maybe dabbling a little bit, but they want to be.
They're the same. They're like the equivalent of a lot of these language learning apps that exist, like the ones you're referencing. They're the equivalent of like mobile games for language learning. You know what I mean? You're not really trying to achieve anything, but you're gonna play around with it here or there. That's the equivalent of
worse than Steam in almost every single way.
Yeah. So. It's not necessarily that the idea of having an app. Obviously, an app is fine. Like there are people who use Anki. It's just how you approach a lot of the times, it's just how we approach the use of the technology itself. Because if you look at people using Anki mobile or whatever, and if you're studying, and then you think of all the people who are just immersing through their phones. That's an app. Maybe they're using VLC for their phone.
Yeah, I have Netflix and
exactly.
Use it for doing that.
So it's just as far as those particular apps go. I mean, they're just it's just. I mean, I don't know. They're not really trying to. They're not. I don't. Do they tell you you're going to be super fluent? I mean, I don't even know. I don't really engage with that too much.
No. I mean, actually, if I look at most of my apps on my phone in my language learning folder, it's like Netflix and Audible and I don't know, stuff like that.
Yeah. So I mean, as far as apps go, there are good apps and there are bad apps, and a lot of those apps, I don't know too much about them. I mean, I've checked them out years ago. And I'd imagine they're improved now, but any app that's going to tell you you don't need to, engage with the target language for thousands of hours, it's obviously just lying. So
Yeah, that's actually quite like, yeah, it's like how you use it. I mean, I know you said your video about Genki, but wait, did you see my video with Matt?
no, I'm sorry, I didn't watch it.
No,
Yeah, I'm
fine,
pretty.
fine.
Just say it's the same thing. It's the same thing I'm talking about. I try to
You don't
stay
want
on
to
my
get too
task.
involved.
Yeah.
Well, like,
So-
so I mean, this is a bit off topic, but I'm still a fan of like those beginner type textbooks.
I
But
want to
think
just
the-
say one thing. He did tell me a bit about you, so I do know some things. I didn't know this though, but he did tell
Okay,
me that
yeah,
he talked
cool.
to you, etc., and that you learned Cantonese and were learning Spanish and things. But I didn't watch it. But continue.
Yeah. Anyway, I was just saying, I think it's all about understanding the position of what you're doing in the bigger picture. So, I recommend people use a beginner's textbook. Like I used, I think, Teach Yourself when I was learning Cantonese. But what I did is I basically ignored all the jargon, just listened and read to the dialogues over and over again. And after about a month, when I had some basic words and vocabulary, I moved on to something more difficult. I think that's fine. But like if you spend months and months on the same thing, trying to drill the grammar explanations and the exercises, you're not going to get anywhere. So I think it's all about how you use these tools as well.
I mean, sure. I mean, like as far as the particular resources, at the ideally, one will move to native content made for natives at a certain point. And I'm not like Matt used to push. Matt used to push doing that immediately. And Matt is referring to Matt versus Japan. I'm guessing 99% of you guys know who it's referring to, but I'll just point that out. But anyways, he used to push just going to native material right away, and I never did that. I've never done that in any of my languages. But I usually take the approach of grinding in Anki, which is pretty much the equivalent of what you're doing. But what I like to do is I'll start with just the sound system of the language. And then oftentimes I have to make my own, cards for that, and then I'll go through that, and then right after that I just do a book. But I don't do like a study book. Actually, I studied some Latvian and stuff before, and there were no resources. I have a good friend who's Latvian, so I just wanted to play around on it. And that time I actually used Learn, one of those series. Maybe it was Pimsleur, because just for the lack of resources. But usually what I like to do is get a grammar book. I get like the thickest grammar book I can find, like 500-600 pages, and I'll just go through and Anki the entire book. That's what I like to do before, because that gives you. I feel like personally, if someone wants just the benefits of an introduction to the language, I feel that there's no introduction that's going to beat just actually doing an entire grammar book, because after that you'll understand the structure of 99% at least of sentences you run across if you have a good grammar book. Right after, and you can grind that in a month or two, and then you're literally just ready to learn words from that point on. So I do that first in every language, because it gives you like instantly you're just in the language because you understand the grammar. Yeah, even if you only understand the grammar through thought consciously at first, it's fine, because it that's how I approach it. So I'm not going to say I'm necessarily against using some other book, because I know they go through the grammar, etc. But I personally wouldn't be reading conversations about going to the airport with Tanaka-san, or I don't know, with Jiang Shen-sung or whatever. I wouldn't be doing that.
I mean, it depends what you get. I mean, some of them are quite interesting. Like the one I got for Spanish was just it was a short story split into 20 chapters with audio about friends going on an adventure traveling around Spain. It was like some little mystery thing, but
mind you, that's what I did for Latvian, because that's just for lack of better resources. But I mean, yeah, I just embrace the grind and just do the grammar books. But yeah, I do agree that some kind of introduction is necessary, or it's going to be just.
Well, I'm not saying necessary. I think it expedites the process. But,
I agree. I agree. I agree completely.
You said you had a problem with Anki, or you didn't like Anki as a software. So I used maybe a few. I used Anki. I tried Quizlet Deluxe. I tried flashcards Deluxe. I tried Quizlet. and I think I tried Memorize as well. Anki seems to be the best one I've tried.
No,
I was
Anki is
wondering
the
what-
best one. So from the perspective I'm saying, it's not the normal perspective saying that it's not a good piece of software. Overall, it's overwhelmingly good. But just I'm talking about like specifics, and I like, I'm coding plugins for it, and actually knowing how it works is just kind of annoying. It's just not how I would do some certain things. So I just feel kind of frustrated by its design, and then I also feel frustrated that things haven't really been updated, and the algorithm's not updated. Nothing. It's just kind of been the same for like 10 years, and it's using a lot of old technology as well. So ideally there would be an alternative that would just be constantly up to date and fully developed. So
Yeah.
and I feel like it's not exactly. And then also another huge thing is just the lack of cross-platform, like well, they're first of all, it's not just fully cross-platform solution. It's not like officially cross-platform. For example, Anki Droid is just it's freeware developed by just people on GitHub. I don't know exactly the details, but it's not by the Anki guy. It's not
The iPhone one seems
what keeps coming to mind is Toei Tsureteru, but that's Japanese. It's not like unified. They don't have like a unified system, and also there's not consistent functionality across all platforms. If you go to Anki Web, tons of things you can't do. You can't browse your whole collection. You can't do just many things. So in my opinion, there would just be a different SRS that could have consistent functionality across all platforms and consistent behavior, because as far as how HTML documents and how the JavaScript behaves, it behaves differently in each of those, or not necessarily, but it behaves different in some of the different Anki platforms, which is not
something that I've noticed
lovely.
as well is that if you've got the plugins and add-ins you get on the desktop version, so for example the reset ease to 250%, that one, I can't do that from my phone. I have to do that from my PC.
I did that one. Yeah, you can only do it from your PC. That's an issue. That's what I'm talking about. It's not unified. So that's, as far as in isolation, it's great, but as far as like what we expect in the not in the 21st, but in 2019, you would expect like a unified platform, and that's not what we're getting with Anki. So I feel like, that is the ideal there. A unified
What do you
platform.
think about the idea of overusing Anki?
And I'm the person to talk to about that, because man, I went. Well, do you know my history with like Anki usage?
No, but I spoke to Matt a little bit about it, and when it got to the point when I was getting over like 250, 300 reps a day, I was like, this is just shitty, and I'd rather read instead. It was more like if I want to like literally read like a book and read like 5 chapters of a book and watch like 5 episodes of a TV drama, then I get punished for that because my Anki rep doubles.
Did you try time boxing?
Sorry?
Did you try time boxing?
No. All I did was stop making reps, and then after a few weeks, it kind of died down a bit.
No, I know. I mean, but have you tried? I mean, you can actually. One might be surprised what happens if they just time box immersion with Anki reps. It's a lot more enjoyable, and you can get through huge amounts of it. Mind you, that's someone who has a lot of free time. That's someone who is like approaching language learning from a pretty hardcore perspective. But I imagine it would also be the same for someone who is, overall just doing less immersion and less Anki.
So you could probably. Time boxing, do you mean say like I did it before and I said between every episode of a drama I'm just going to Anki for 5 or 10 minutes?
No, that's too long. Probably every episode of a drama, that's horrible. That's not going to be fun. You should do like 5 minutes. Like I'll watch 5 minutes of a drama, maybe 10 minutes, and then do 5 minutes of Anki. Maybe you want to do 5 minutes of a drama, then 1 minute of Anki. Something like that is better. Maybe 3 minutes of a drama, 1 minute. You have to play around with the times and figure out what actually works for you. It's almost always better to just do the leisure activity for a longer amount of time and then switch to the reps. But another thing to play around with that when it comes to time boxing is if you find yourself just getting more distracted, it's better to just go really low, which not everyone can do, mind you. It's not. This is for like a bit of the grind. This is a bit of a grinder's mentality, but what you can do is just get down to the point where you're doing 1 minute of each. It doesn't give you enough time to really be distracted.
No,
and then you can, I mean, that's what I'm saying. No, but no, you don't usually do that. You don't start with that. But I'm saying if you're trying to just grind to like, it's like hitting the boosts. You don't really need to do that. There's no reason to take that approach.
I mean, in my experience, the only reason it gets unenjoyable is when the reps per day get too high. So, I mean, I was going to experiment with a new idea when I learn my next language. I'm not going to say what it is. I think you know already. I'm not going to say. I haven't said to my subscribers yet. So.
Oh, okay, cool.
But so what I'm going to try with my next language is basically when when I'm doing like sentence mining and doing that, when the reps start to creep up too high, I'm going to switch to my method that I used before, which was basically dissecting like a chapter of a book or dialogues. And like if my reps get too high, I'm just going to switch and just say focus purely on reading and input and more intense work with dialogues. And then when it gets down to a more manageable level, start sentence mining again, and then wait for it to drop and try and do that like rep control.
Yeah, that might be a reasonable approach as well. I'm curious how many Anki cards did you end up with? I'm curious. At the end of how long did you learn Cantonese for as well?
2 years.
2 years? Okay.
I didn't.
Go on.
I barely used Anki at all, actually.
That's fine.
I did Heisig 1, which is 1,500 cards. I made, when I was sentence mining, I took the new characters and made separate character cards for them. So there was probably about 800 of them-ish. And then maybe like 1,000 sentences. But that's when I've got to like the 1,000 sentence mark, my reps were so high, I just stopped.
At 1,000 sentences? How many did you add? Like 100 sentences a day for like 10 days, or what? How did you get them so high with only 1,000 sentences?
It was like at like 250 to 300 reps per day or something. And I think I was because I had quite limited resources. I really wasn't doing I+1. A lot of them were like I+6.
Yeah, I did that too. Yeah. I do that at the beginning. I just power through. But okay, continue.
So I just basically stopped making new cards and just purely focused on reading and tried to read like 2 hours a day instead, and I found that way more enjoyable. So I just carried on.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, that's fine. So I'm gonna ask you, how proficient do you feel you got at reading?
Proficient.
Yeah, like how often would you just read without not really needing to check readings or meanings? I'm curious.
So it was when I was
compared to your English. I'm curious. I'm actually curious.
No. So if I frame it, so when I was at the end and I was reading, it depends what context I'm reading.
Yeah.
When I was reading like a lifestyle sort of book at the end, just kind of revolving around everyday life and things like that, and work troubles, things like that, and probably I'd have to look up like one character per page or something like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, what? Okay, so what would you consider that book like, as far as like it's just overall regular, like what kind of tier of difficulty would you consider it? I'm just curious because I know that when I've read my languages, some books are just super easy to read, some books are just like crazy with the vocabulary. So was it just simple, or like you would consider more common vocabulary just in general, or was it difficult vocabulary and you still were looking up one character
it's probably
per page?
It was like well written, but it wasn't overly metaphorical with the language. So it's kind of like so that I'm reading. It's not like Nobel Prize novel crazy. So many metaphors. I don't know what's going on, but it's kind of like.
What happens when you read something like that? Is my question. Can you read something like that? Can you read like any content?
It didn't exist in Cantonese, so I don't know. I just read what I could get my hands on.
Okay. Well, I don't know what exists. Yeah. Well, then I mean, like you can read regular Mandarin, right? Or like you can read just regular Chinese.
No, I never bothered.
You've never bothered to do that. So because I would just be, and I'm not saying it anyways. I would be like, I'm curious the level of reading one builds up without some kind of reminder. Because I feel like it'd be really easy to forget, unless you read so avidly that I feel like it'd be really easy to let a lot of words slip through slowly. Like it would just take a long time.
I did forget a lot. And then as I carried on through the book, they'd come up again, and I'd remember them by the end of the book because the same words sort of came up again and again.
Yeah.
But the level, it's kind of like it's a well-written book. It's a good book. It's like
well, I mean, not so much that book anymore. I mean, just okay, go on.
Like that. Maybe like one down from a novel, something like that.
Oh, so did you read novels? I don't know like anything about the Cantonese like writing scene. Have you read novels? Have you read like? I mean, what have you read? I'm curious.
No, so I read. Well, I only read about 10. It depends if you include comic books. If you, I read about 12 books. 7 of them were comic books, so don't include them. And then there were 5 actual books, and they were just ones that were published on Hong Kong Gold and written by just random people in Hong Kong that wanted to write. And some of them got published in films and that.
Yeah.
Some of them were pretty good quality, but beyond that, I mean, Cantonese isn't written in Cantonese. It doesn't particularly have a lot of resources.
Well, I mean, can you read standard Chinese?
I can read bits of it. Like I can read quite a lot of it.
I have a roommate. I think I briefly mentioned that to you before in Hong Kong. Like when I lived in Hong Kong for about 3 months before, and I ended up learning Chinese after that point. But I talked to them and they recommended me like a lot of books that are written in Hong Kong by Hong Kong authors, and it's just written like in normal Chinese. Like I can read it fine because it's like Mandarin. Exactly.
So that's standard written Chinese.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So it's like Mandarin. So do you do that?
No, not really.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I wanted to go because that's like completely different to how you speak.
Yeah, that I've heard.
It's like maybe like 50% of the characters would be different. So I always wanted to.
Yeah, that's what I'm. I see.
Because I didn't want to read loads of books and then me start using standard Mandarin Cantonese. I thought it'd be like a weird mix of what I'd end up speaking.
Hey, that's really bright thinking right there because, man, I did have some issues with that. Matt's spoken about that too. It's really easy if you get, like, crazy into the... I forget how I'm pretty sure we talked about this on a podcast that we did. And it's so easy for the brain to just become artificially used to language that's uncommon that you're studying in Anki, and it'll feel like it's common, and it's going to spit it out for you all the time. It's like, oh, you're thinking of this concept? Here's this word. And then you're like, no, that word is super rare. Stop, brain. And it just keeps feeding it to you. It's like...
I guess if you have it in Anki, your brain doesn't think it's rare because you've seen it a lot of
times. I know. So it's a real issue. There is an issue with that, for sure. But it's still pretty awesome. Like, mind you, I haven't really done, languages in a long time now. It's been 4 years since I've been doing languages, actually. But I still have I feel like I have a decent level in all of my languages still. But I definitely, once I finish some of these coding projects that I have planned, I plan on trying to, recover ability in a lot of them, and maybe even, excuse me, and depending on which country I end up living in, taking one even to a higher level. But I will say, like, during the times when I was fully into it, it was pretty cool just being able to just read obscure vocabulary with easily, and then looking at native speakers who are like, "What? Why do you read this?" And they're like, they just look at you like you're stupid. And I agree. I agreed in the long run because later I would take the approach of always using a frequency list and not learning words over like 60,000 because it was just stupid. Even words at like from 40,000 up, you're kind of you're playing a dangerous game there, but I would usually include this.
That's the reason why I stopped Cantonese after about 2 years, man, because I could understand like most of TV and films, and I integrate into a social group, but because of the lack of resources, it was hard getting beyond that. So that's why I wanted to try and the one I'm doing next, I'm going to stick with for a long time and try to actually get it to like a really super high level. This is a real problem with like resources.
What I want to ask you also, what are your motivations to take language learning to a super high level as well?
Just I don't know, because I think it'll be fun. I mean,
okay, fair enough. I mean, I'm just asking. We all have our.
I want to. I'm not gonna. I can't bother to keep it secret. It's too annoying. So the next one I want to do is Mandarin. um, if anyone doesn't know that already, they probably do.
You should chill out my plugin when it comes out, man.
So thanks for watching up to this point, guys. So this is actually split into 2 parts, and part 2 is going to be on Lucas's channel. So I'll leave a link to that in the description. So definitely go check that out and subscribe. And I'll see you guys over there.
Yeah, guys, I have a lot of cool stuff on my channel about language learning and some tools that might help you along your path. I invite you over to my channel. Hey guys, welcome to my channel.